What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, at this point in the season, the NFL draft is over, NFL free agency is pretty much over, and we know who's going to be competing for the 55-man roster come training camp, come the preseason, and who's going to try to be competing to make the 55-man roster, the active roster, come week one when we take on the Chicago Bears in Ford Field. Now, I wanted to do a video doing my predictions on the 55-man roster and who's going to make it before the preseason, before training camp, and then I want to do a second one after training camp, after the preseason, before official cuts are made, and kind of, see how the two lists stack up. I wanted to look at it, how they look, how I think it's going to look before we see the Lions play and how it looks after we see the Lions play, and just kind of compare and contrast and see where I was right and wrong. Before we do get into the video, if you are new to the channel and are enjoying the content, consider liking the videos, subscribe to the channel, and sharing it with a Lions or an NFL fan that you believe would enjoy this type of content. But with that being said, let's get into looking at what I believe will be the 55-man roster come week one. Now, starting on the offensive side of the ball, we have to start with our signal callers, right? So I think the quarterback position is pretty simple. Matthew Stafford is going to start. Chase Daniels and David Blau are going to compete for that second spot. I believe Chase Daniels is going to take it, but the Detroit Lions did carry three quarterbacks come week one last year, and I believe they will do that again. So I think Stafford, Chase Daniels, and David Blau will all make the active roster and make the team. Pretty simple stuff to start off with, and then we get into a very controversial one in running backs. So last year, the Detroit Lions carried 4 running backs on the active roster. I think they carry one more this year. I think that they take one of those additional roster spots and put it at running back, because we have a lot of talent at running back. And even though we put in an extra roster spot, there are still guys that didn't make it that definitely could have made it on this list. So I have the Detroit Lions carrying Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Bo Scarborough, Jason Huntley, and Nick Bawden. So Kerryon and DeAndre Swift are pretty obvious, right? Kerryon Johnson has been our premier back for the last couple of years. DeAndre Swift is a new up-and-coming rookie running back, very hyped out of the draft, very talented running back. Probably should have been taken earlier than the second round. I have Bo Scarborough on this list because even last year when Ty Johnson and Bo Scarborough were both healthy, Bo Scarborough got a majority of the carries. Bo Scarborough became the power back. He became the bell cow. He became the go-to running back when we needed to run the ball. And Ty Johnson, even though he was on the team before Bo, even though he knew the coaches, he knew the scheme, he was on the active roster before Bo Scarborough even got there. Bo Scarborough still took that step forward, still became the premier back for the end of the season, and really made Ty Johnson take a back seat. And then Jason Huntley is a running back, very fast, very explosive, very good athlete, is very versatile, can catch the ball out of the backfield, can run the ball very well, can even do punt and kick returns. So I think his versatility, I think that his, just speed and explosiveness and quickness is going to be good enough to make the roster over Ty Johnson. And then Nick Bawden is a fullback, and I really don't see Ty Johnson in a fullback role. And I personally think that the Detroit Lions are going to try to keep a fullback just because of that mentality that we're going to run the ball as much as we can. And typically, if you run the ball a lot, you have a very good fullback. And Nick Bawden has actually showed some things over the years that makes me think that he is a pretty good fullback in the NFL, even though fullback isn't a very utilized position. So I did leave out Ty Johnson, and the reason is I couldn't find a role for him. He's not quite as fast and explosive as Jason Huntley. He's not as powerful as Bo Scarborough. And as I said, Bo Scarborough really took carries from him last year, even when they were both healthy. And even in the punt and kick return game, which he took a little bit part in last year, I still think that Jason Huntley is going to be better at him than Jason Huntley is going to be better at that than Ty Johnson. And I feel like Ty Johnson just lost his role this year. I really don't feel like he has anything I don't think he has anything to contribute to the team that other running backs can't do. So that is why I left him off the list. That is probably going to be one of the more controversial ones. But again, I just couldn't really find a role for him, even though I actually really like Ty Johnson as a Detroit Lion. Now, moving on to the wide receivers. Last year, the Detroit Lions carried 5 wide receivers, and this year I have them using that other extra roster spot to hold a wide receiver, because this wide receiver core is absolutely stacked. Now, getting the obvious ones out of the way, I have us carrying Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, Danny Amendola, and Marvin Hall. Obviously, those first 3 were starters for us last year. Marvin Hall was a role player, but a very good one. Did not a lot of things, but what he did do, he was elite at. So those 4 were pretty obvious. And then I have us carrying Geronimo Allison and Quintez Cephas. Now, why I picked those two, Geronimo Allison is a veteran wide receiver in the NFL. He showed that he can win a lot of jump balls. He's a big body wide receiver, I believe 6'3", 215. And I think if Marvin Jones does go down with injuries again, as he has done in the past couple of years, Geronimo Allison can step into that wide receiver 2 role much better than Marvin Hall, much better than Danny Amendola, much better than, really anybody else on the roster, because he's more of a big body wide receiver, which is what we like to put on the boundaries, leaving Amendola to be a slot receiver, leaving Marvin Hall to be not a gadget player, but a selectively used player for certain situations, certain packages, certain looks. And I think that that's going to make I think we're going to use Marvin Hall less. Well, if Marvin Jones does go down, I don't think Marvin Hall takes over that number 2 receiver role. I just don't think he's that good. I think Geronimo Allison fits the mold a little bit better for what the Lions like a boundary receiver, leaving Marvin Hall to be more of that big play wide receiver that you put in, not every play, but you put in against certain looks, you put it against certain packages, and makes him that much more efficient because people aren't necessarily thinking of him as the biggest problem on the field. And then I have us holding Quintez Cephas, the rookie wide receiver out of Wisconsin. Now, I have us carrying Cephas, one, because of the Jeffrey Okudah quote. I think that if the number 3 overall player in the entire NFL draft is saying that you're the best receiver he played, either, that's really bad for the wide receivers he played, or you are a very good wide receiver. And also, he comes in with a very blue-collar mentality. He's going to come into work. He's going to work harder than you. He's going to outperform you. He's going to out-practice you. He's going to really do everything in his power to earn a role on this team. He's going to do everything in his power to, work as hard as he can and really prove to the coaching staff that he was worth the pick, and he probably should have been drafted higher. At least that's what he's going to try to prove, and I think that the coaches are going to take a liking to that, and they're going to keep him on the active roster. Now, obviously, that means that we are cutting guys like Travis Fulgham, Chris Lacey, and Jamal Agnew. Personally, I don't really see a role for any of the 3. I think Travis Fulgham could still, make the practice squad. I think Jamal Agnew, switching to wide receiver at this point in his career, it's too late. It's not really going to help him. As I said, I think Jason Huntley is going to take over the kicking punt return roles, and Jamal Agnew is not going to be that receiver. And even if he were going to be used as a gadget player, as he has done in the past under Jim Bob Cooter, I think Jason Huntley is going to take that role away too. I really think Jason Huntley is a steal from our last draft, if you cannot tell. I think he's a gadget player. I think he's a huge threat. I think he is a pick, kick, and punt returner. And if you have all those things in one, you can afford to get rid of certain guys that can't do a lot of things, and unfortunately for Jamal Agnew, that is him. Moving on to tight ends, last year the Detroit Lions carried 3 tight ends throughout the season, and I have them doing that again. I have us carrying TJ Hawkinson, Jesse James, and Hunter Bryant, actually. I have Hunter Bryant beating out Isaac Nauta. I just think that he's a better pure receiver. I think that, Hunter Bryant was, mocked to be taken in the late 3rd, early 4th, somewhere around there from what I was seeing. And we got him as an undrafted free agent. Isaac Nauta we got in the 6th round. So I think it'll be a battle between them. But I actually like Hunter Bryant. I think he's just a better pure wide receiver. Well, I think he's a better wide receiver threat. I think he's a better receiving threat for the Detroit Lions going into next season. And I think that if Darrell Bevell wants to get his tight ends a little bit more involved in the passing game, they're going to want to look Hunter Bryant's way because he is a very good he's a very good receiving tight end. And I think that he is going to beat out Isaac Nauta, but I think it'll be a very interesting battle to watch in the preseason. And by no means is it a for sure thing that Hunter Bryant will beat out Isaac Nauta, because I still think Isaac Nauta brings a lot to the table. So moving on to the offensive line, the Detroit Lions last year carried 9 offensive linemen, and I have them doing that again. This year I have them carrying Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Jonah Jackson, Logan Stenberg, Big V, Tyrell Crosby, Joe Dahl, Bo Benchwazzle, and Joshua Garnett. So those offensive linemen are the guys I picked. Obviously, the way that they are ranked on screen is not how I think they're going to look in the depth chart. That's not, this is not a depth chart prediction. That's just, the order that I listed them in. That just happened to be the way they were listed. So don't take any account into the way that any position is really ranked as far as who's at the top of the list and who's at the bottom, because this is not a depth chart video. This is just who I think is going to make the active roster. And I think those are the guys that will. This offensive line has a lot of question marks, but I actually think a lot of these guys, especially Ragnow and Taylor Decker, are going to be the anchors. I think we're not going to cut our 3rd or 4th round pick from last year, or from this past draft. I think Joshua Garnett is a former 1st round pick. I think they're going to find a way to use him. We kept Bo Benchwazzle for the last 2 years for a reason. We've used Tyrell Crosby a lot in certain rotational packages for a reason. And then Joe Dahl I still think is a very solid guard. Now, moving on to the defensive side of the ball, we're going to start with interior defensive linemen. Last year, the Detroit Lions carried 5, and I have them doing that again. I have them carrying Danny Shelton, Nick Williams, Deshaun Hand, John Pennicini, and Kevin Strong. Now, Kevin Strong might be the only question mark there because you might be thinking, who's Kevin Strong? But actually, last year, he was kind of thrown into a bigger role than a lot of people were expecting, and I think he handled it very well. While he didn't really get a whole lot of production as a defensive tackle, as an interior defensive lineman, I still think he showed a lot of good things, and I think that being there for the last year or two, being under Matt Patricia knows him. Matt Patricia knows he's going to work hard. I think that that's going to give him the edge over a couple other guys that might be on the bubble and might not, it might be in a battle with him, but I think that the familiarity, I think the fact that he stepped up when he really, it wasn't a guarantee that he was going to do anything like last year, and he had to step up, and he did, and, welcome that role. I think that is a very big thing to see out of any player, and I think that's going to help him make the roster. Now, moving on to edge rushers. Last year, the Detroit Lions carried 4 edge rushers at week 1, and I have them doing that again. I have them carrying Trey Flowers, the Okwara brothers, both Julian and Romeo Okwara, and I have them carrying Austin Bryant as edge rushers. Not anything too crazy. Austin Bryant's the only guy that, didn't really do a whole lot last year for the Lions and was on the team, but he was injured a lot of the year, and I'd expect a lot of big things from him next year, stepping in as more of a pass rusher, as having a bigger role next year that he had last year, and I actually think that he will be a very productive player next year if healthy for the entire season. So, moving on to linebackers. Last year, the Detroit Lions carried 5, and I have them doing that again. I have them carrying Jared Davis, Jamie Collins, Jelani Tavai, Jalen Reeves-Maben, and Reggie Ragland. So, I think Reggie Ragland was a good pickup for the Detroit Lions. He's just kind of a bigger, stronger, more built Jared Davis. He's a very good run stopper. I think Jared Davis is going to be put in a little bit of a different role this year. I think instead of being like a really coverage linebacker, I think he's going to be put in more of a run and chase role, which is what he thrived in at Florida. He's not a very good coverage linebacker, but as we've said before, he's a good run stopper. He's very good at tracking the ball, on the ground. He's very good at sideline to sideline speed. He's a very athletic guy. He's very good at tackling. He just struggles in coverage at times. And I think Matt Patricia needs to put Jared Davis in a position where he can run and chase and not have to cover as much. So, those are my 5 linebackers. Now, moving on to the secondary, we'll start with cornerbacks. Last year, the Detroit Lions carried 7 cornerbacks. This year, I have them carrying 7. Those 7 are Desmond Trufant, Jeffrey Okudah, Justin Coleman, Amani Oruwariye, Darrell Roberts, Michael Ford, and Tony McRae. So I have us cutting D. Virgin, who was a very productive special teams player for us last year. But I think McRae takes over Virgin's job. I think with the addition of Braden Coombs as special teams coordinator, those two are familiar, both being from Cincinnati. I think that Tony McRae can bring you some really good things on the special teams side of the ball, just like D. Virgin. But I think that Tony McRae is a better cornerback. I think he's a better coverage guy, and I think that if we really needed him to, he could step in, and I would have more faith in Tony McRae than I had in D. Virgin last year. So that is why I have Tony McRae, beating on D. Virgin for that 7th cornerback spot. Looking at the safeties, the Detroit Lions carried 5 safeties last year. I have them doing that again. Those safeties are Tracy Walker, Deron Harmon, Jaron Kearse, Will Harris, and Jalen Elliott, undrafted free agent out of Notre Dame. Now, the reason I have Jalen Elliott over guys like Bobby Price or even CJ Moore, who played last year for us, I think that Matt Patricia is really going to take a liking to Jalen Elliott. Obviously, I watched him a lot at Notre Dame, being a Notre Dame fan. I got to watch him be a leader on that Notre Dame defense, be a very solid player. He's not very flashy. He's not going to light guys up. He's not going to run in the 4.3s. He's not the biggest guy. He's not going to hit you the hardest. But he's a guy that is a leader, was a captain for the Notre Dame defense for at least 2, if not 3 years. I'm struggling to remember right now. He's a good wrap-up tackler. He is very good at angles. He's a very smart guy. And he's maybe not the most athletic guy, but I would not say athleticism is a weakness for him. And I think just that leadership ability is going to really catch Matt Patricia's eye. I think it's going to not force him to put him on the roster, but I think it's really going to make a good impression on Matt Patricia. Just like Will Harris was like team captain at Boston College. Matt Patricia wants leaders on his defense. He wants guys on the defense that are going to motivate the other guys, even if things aren't going quite their way. He wants guys that are going to motivate, keep spirits up, keep spirits high. And Jalen Elliott is that guy, as well as being a very good football player overall. Does fundamentals very well, wraps up, is a very good safety. And, who likes fundamentals more than Matt Patricia? He likes the leadership. He likes the fundamentals. Jalen Elliott makes the team as the 5th safety. So that leaves us with 3 spots on the special teams, and those guys are Don Muehlbach at long snapper, Matt Prater at kicker, and Aaron Sipos at punter. Pretty standard stuff. You could say Jack Fox might beat him out, but I think they like Aaron Sipos a lot. I think Aaron Sipos makes the team as the team's punter. And that is my 55-man roster for the Detroit Lions. If you would change anything, whether you put Ty Johnson in the running back core and take out somebody else, whether it be put Jamal Agnew in and take out somebody else on the wide receiver core, or, changing up anything that I said from the 55-man roster, let me know that in the comments below. Let me know, did I miss somebody on the roster? Did I or did I put somebody on the roster that really didn't deserve a spot? Just let me know all that in the comments. Let me know how you guys think that this 55-man roster looks. Do you think that it's a good 55-man roster or not? But with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Kind of a different video today. Not a whole lot of stats to go off of, not a whole lot of analytics, not a whole lot of research to do, which is good because yesterday there was a lot of research I had to do and my brain kind of needed a break. So I just wanted to do a more opinion-based one, just kind of talk to you guys, give you my opinion about our roster and who I think is going to make the active roster. As I said, if you disagree, leave anything that you would change down in the comments below. Let me know what you would change. But with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day. If there is more Lions before tomorrow, I'll obviously make a video letting everybody know. But until then, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching the video. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.